Welcome to the Friday Happy Hour with victory strategist, award-winning author and your happy hour host, Annmarie Kelly. Each week, Annmarie chats with women who have reinvented, started over or wrote fabulous next chapters. They share how they overcame their midlife challenges and how you can too. So kick back with some good happy hour something to drink and enjoy today's show.
Welcome. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour with me, Annmarie Kelly, and I'm that recovering good girl and your victorious woman empowerment partner. And this is where us victory chicks and you men who care about us meet on Fridays to chat about things we can do to overcome our challenges, get empowered, and, make our lives sparkle. Thanks for coming today, and I'm glad you're here enjoying another summer Friday Happy Hour with me. And it's the 4th of July weekend. And here in the U.S., we love to celebrate our independence with parties and barbecues and fireworks. And since Philly is the birthplace of our freedom, Philly is like ground zero for the festivities. And things are starting in Philly. I think it's tomorrow. It's like a 4-day thing, and there's free stuff all over the city. But the July 4th weekend also has special significance for our country because the Battle of Gettysburg happened on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And this week it happens to be part of the weekend. And today's guest is historian Mark Nesbitt. And I asked him to come and talk a little bit about that famous battle. And I mean a little bit because, in addition to being an expert on the Battle of Gettysburg, Mark is also an expert on the ghosts of Gettysburg. And you know me, I love talking about ghosts and spirits and stuff, and that's what I'm going to ask him to talk about today. So, you might need to start having that glass of wine just a little earlier today. And what the heck, it's the start of the holiday weekend, so go for it. And are you ready for the holiday weekend? I am. I'm so ready for 4 days of doing mostly nothing. Okay, a little work around the house, mostly because I don't like living in filth, and a barbecue on Tuesday with Joseph's cousin. But the rest of the weekend, I hope to be sucking down drinks on the deck. Well, you know what? That's my fantasy anyway. It just never seems to happen that way, partly because I'd be so bored doing nothing but drinking all weekend. I mean, I did that, I did that in my 20s and been there and done that, and it's fine. It was good doing it then. But the other thing is, at this stage, I have 2 drinks and I'm toasted, and then I fall asleep. So, that's no fun. And Joseph's kind of the same way. So we've both been working so much overtime that we don't have much planned except maybe a little bit of time at Longwood Gardens. I wouldn't mind going back to see that light display again. Have you seen it yet? I was there on opening weekend, and I thought it was fabulous. And I hope to get to see some fireworks someplace. Fireworks are my personal favorite thing of the whole summer holiday weekends. And so, Victory Chicks and you guys, I want to let you know I've had quite a week. A crazy party kind of week. First, I might have mentioned it last week that those Prosperity Sisters, the ones who make those full-spirited flavor liqueur cakes that I love so much, they invited us, Joseph and I, along with a few other people, to their house for a Friday night get-together. And those girls are so much fun. Not only are their full-spirited flavor liqueur cakes really good, but those girls are so much fun, and so are their spouses, that just getting together with them would have been good all by itself. But Prosperity Sister Kathy and her spouse Jack have a huge backyard that includes a beautifully landscaped mountain. Not just a regular mountain, but one complete, and it was beautiful. It had all cute things in it, and a complete set of HO trains that worked. It was so pretty and so interesting. And, I might have thought that train display was a big deal on its own. Well, it is. But it's a very clever kind of landscaping. And I might have thought that, except for the caboose. Yes, you heard me, a caboose. And I'm not talking about somebody with a big butt. I'm talking about an actual, real-life red caboose from an actual train. And to the side of it, there's a train station. And before you start thinking this backyard caboose and the train station would be your idea of a nightmare neighbor with a cluttered backyard, I want to tell you that this thing was a joy to behold. Joseph and I and our friend Sarah got the tour from Jack, whose hobby is carpentry. Well, he's sort of an all-purpose fixer-upper guy, but carpentry is his main thing. Well, that and history, which is what spiked his interest in the caboose to begin with. He's a train aficionado. The train station is actually, the closed-up part is actually his carpentry workshop, complete with every piece of equipment you could imagine. And, I didn't see them, but I'm guessing he had every kind of drill bit you could ever need. And those drill bits, I've learned that from you. I've learned that you guys always need a drill bit before you can do some job around the house. And what I'm thinking is, you say that you need a new drill bit to get out of the house to figure out how you're actually going to do the job. I know that you tell us you can do it. We ask you to do it, and you say you can do it. But then you have to go to the hardware store. So what I think happens in real life is you have no clue how to do this thing that you just said you could do, or you have maybe an idea. And then you have to go to the hardware store to talk to some expert or some guy you hope is an expert to find out exactly what to do. And then you just buy a drill bit whether you need it or not. But I don't think Jack can use that excuse. I actually think Jack doesn't need to use that excuse. Anyway, you should have seen this caboose. Jack explained the function of the caboose as being a storage area for the train. And it was generally the scruftiest car and the most inhabited by the conductor and the brakeman. But this baby wasn't scrufty anymore. It might have been one time, but it wasn't then. Jack laid hardwood every place, including the ceiling. There's hardwood floors, there was hardwood on the walls, there's hardwood on the ceilings. And then he added historical pictures of trains as well as train-related relics of a bygone era before airplanes weren't the thing and trains were the main form of travel. Well, the front of the caboose had a breakfast nook. And then there was a sleeper car for if you wanted to, I guess you could, if you had guests, they could sleep there. And then the back of the caboose had tables and chairs. And that's where Jack, you guys are going to love this, that's where Jack and his buddies play cards. Yes, you guys, Jack tricked out the red caboose and made it his man cave. I wish I'd taken pictures because you would have been blown away. It was the coolest thing. Of course, I wasn't thinking about playing cards there. I was thinking inviting your friends over for tea or something, but it's me. Well, the four of us Joseph and Jack and our friend Sarah and I spent most of our time at the caboose, but while we were at the caboose, I should say it that way, talking about history and ghosts and old movies whose stars had great scenes on the ends of cabooses. Like that movie with Marilyn Monroe, Some Like It Hot, or Marty McFly, Back to the Future. Or do you remember TV, Little House on the Prairie had a caboose show one time, and Wild Wild West, they lived on a caboose. It was very cool to be on the back of this red caboose and having such a good time. Then on Wednesday, I had lunch with my mom's girlfriends. And, when my mom first moved to Maris Grove, there were 8 or 9 of them, and now there aren't. But Gloria, Millie, Mary, and Joseph and I Gloria, Millie, and Mary are spicy as ever. And Joseph and I had a good time, and I enjoy spending time with them. It's just lunch, but it's nice, and they have good memories of my mom, so that's nice for me, too. And then last night, I was at the Mann Center for the taping of a Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that later, but you might think that I spent the week partying, and that would be half true. But if you've been listening, I've been trying to get deep edits done on my next book, The 5-Year Marriage, and that's what I spent most of the week doing. And that and reading chapters out loud to Joseph so we could both find errors. And yesterday I was not leaving my office until I sent the manuscript to the editor. And I did it. So I'm so excited. And I'm still on track for October. Now, you've probably heard me say this before. Writing a book is like having a baby, except that the making it part isn't as fun as like actually making a baby. But the gestation period is at least as long, and the actual getting it out is just as painful. And here's the thing, you guys, unlike having a real baby, even men can do this, like historian Mark Nesbitt. Mark has written more books than I can count. He was a National Park Service Ranger historian for 5 years at Gettysburg before starting his own research and writing company. And he has published over 20 books, including the national award-winning Ghosts of Gettysburg series, 2 Ghost Hunters Field Guides, and Civil War Ghost Trails. And in 1994, Mark created, and his spouse Carol created, Ghosts of Gettysburg candlelight walking tours based on stories from his books. So Mark's here, and I have so many questions for him. So listen, go get some good happy hour, something to drink, and come back for Mark Nesbitt. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Remember when you wished you had more time for yourself? And now you have it, but you notice you're keeping busy with stuff, but that stuff isn't making you feel happy or filled up? And when you think about what would make you happy and filled up, you get stuck or feel overwhelmed. And then you go back to what's more familiar, more comfortable, even if it's not making you happy. Wouldn't you love to find a way to start making sense of that deep discontent you're feeling? Well, you're not alone. I'm Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. And I know there's a place for you, one that other women have found to be both inspirational and empowering. And it's the Victorious Woman Project. Go there now and get on my mailing list, where you'll be the first to know about my upcoming online workshops, teleseminars, and more. And while you're there, take a couple minutes to look over my blog. You can download some of the free stuff I have for you and let it get your creative juices going. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victorious Woman Project. And that's at www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with Mark Nesbitt. Mark, I'm so glad you could join me today. How are you?
Well, just fine, Annmarie. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Mark, I've been on your website, and your spouse Carol and I were talking, and I know you were, before you were a ghost hunter, you were a park ranger in Gettysburg. And then I read that you hail from Ohio. So
yes.
What brought you to Gettysburg?
Well, I'd been a tourist to Gettysburg for many, many years. From the time I was a kid, went to my parents. And I was about in my junior year of college, and I was kind of tired of working construction for my dad. And I said, what the heck, I'm just going to, I don't care if I have to pump gas or anything. I'd like to live in Gettysburg this summer. So I applied. Somebody gave me the advice to apply for the National Park Service. I did. They had a big turnover that year in seasonal rangers, and I happened to get the job. And then I stayed on with 180-day appointments after that for about 5 years. And just enjoyed the heck out of myself. In the summertime, it's the best job in the world. You're talking to people. It's a beautiful place. You're living where other people are going to spend their vacations. It's a lot of fun, so I just stuck around.
You know, Mark, I was last December, between Christmas and New Year's, I needed to do a writer's retreat because I wasn't getting work done on my book fast enough. And I chose Gettysburg because I figured nobody's going to be there in December.
Oh.
And I drove around the park, and it was the first time I could see as much as I saw, because usually I go when there's people there.
Right.
And it gets really, really crowded. But
off season is fun. It's nice if you know where you're going. A lot of places aren't open. Mm-hmm. I always tell people to come either in June or in September if you can, because it seems like those are a little bit quieter times. But a lot of people, a lot of places are still open. But December's a nice time too. We'll take you.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it in December. It was quiet. It was peaceful, and it wasn't real cold, so I could walk a little bit. It was very nice. Listen, Mark, I was curious. How much work does it take to become a park ranger in a place like Gettysburg?
Well, of course, this is 30 years ago when I applied, and it was a couple pages I had to fill out. And like I said, I was kind of lucky because they had a turnover that particular year. I guess now it's a little tougher. I don't know about seasonal employees. You can always volunteer for a little while in the park and get to know the people. That may help a little bit, when it comes to choosing. But I'm not really sure how you do it now. But when I was doing it, was only a couple pages I had to fill out in a form. But
and then they do all the education?
Well, they were looking for history majors. I was an English major, so I don't know how. I'm serious. I don't know how I got the job.
Mark, timing is everything. Timing is everything. So yeah. So, but I was reading that Gettysburg's like a little college town. Was before the battle. It's a little college town. Do you know anything about that part of its history?
Oh yeah. It was the county seat, so there was a lot of legal activity here. But there was a college called Pennsylvania College at the time, and also a Lutheran Theological Seminary that was here. So that brought people in as well. The biggest manufacturing here was probably carriage making. There's this rumor going around that the reason the Confederate soldiers marched to Gettysburg is because of all the shoe factories, and they wanted to get shoes because they were wearing out shoe leather on the roads. But there were no shoe factories in Gettysburg. There were cobblers, but no shoe factories. But carriage trimming and carriage making was one of the largest industries in the area.
Huh. And so Hanover was the shoe place, huh?
Well, eventually, Hanover became, because very famous for their shoes,
So this is the weekend, Mark, and could you tell my listeners what was so important about the Battle of Gettysburg?
Yeah, this is the big weekend. Not only is it the 4th of July weekend, but we also have the anniversary of the battle, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. Gettysburg was important for a number of reasons. It was the culmination of the second Confederate Southern invasion of the North. In other words, they were, for the most part, fighting a defensive war. They just wanted to separate from the Union, just like we had separated from England in the 1770s. But at least twice, in 1862 and in June of 1863, the South decided to invade the North, and so that was the big deal. And Pennsylvania was just absolutely in a panic when Robert E. Lee and his army of 75,000 Confederates came over the border, and then it was a Union victory here on July 3rd, 1863. The Confederates retreated July 4th and 5th, and it is called the high water mark of the Confederacy, the closest they ever came to victory in the 4-year American Civil War. So that's one of the reasons why Gettysburg is so important.
Well, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but if the North hadn't won in Gettysburg, would we be two different countries now?
Well, actually, I wrote a book called If the South Won Gettysburg, and I postulate that we would have, that the continent would have balkanized. In other words, we would have turned into a Europe. You would have had at least 5 different countries or republics in the area. Of course, the South would have seceded. Texas, then, being as independent as they have always been and had been a republic before, they would have seceded from the South. California would have, they were so rich, they really didn't need the rest of us, so they would have been their own country. And then the Rocky Mountain states with their minerals and wealth in mining and things like that, I postulate would have become a country all their own.
That's fascinating. That's just that one battle, those 3 days, really turned everything around, huh?
It is, yeah, it's true. Well, it was not only Gettysburg, but then on July 4th, Vicksburg, Mississippi fell, and that basically gave the Mississippi River to the Union, and it split the Confederacy right in two. No longer could they use that river for supply or for anything, communications or moving troops. So it was a very important 4 days here, July 1st through July 4th, between Gettysburg and Vicksburg.
And we're near the Mason-Dixon line. And and I'm not sure where in Pennsylvania by Gettysburg it comes, but below the Mason-Dixon line was Confederate, and above the Mason-Dixon line was
Union. Well, more or less. We're about 7 miles right now from where I am in Gettysburg from the Mason-Dixon line. But see, Maryland was a border state, and they had leanings both ways. But of course, mostly Southern. It was the Baltimore, when Union troops had to march through it from Massachusetts in 1861, the beginning of the war. They were attacked by mobs, by pro-Southern mobs in Baltimore, and stoned, and people were shot and killed, and that type of thing early in the war. But when Lee made his first invasion of the North in 1862, he expected he would have a lot of support from Maryland, and never got it.
No.
So, it all depends on what part of Maryland you're from, whether you're Southern or Northern persuasion.
Mark, I've always been curious about this. What is the Mason-Dixon line? Like, do you know how that came about?
Well, to my understanding, it was a couple of guys that did a survey, and it was basically state, trying to figure out the delineation between states, particularly Maryland and Pennsylvania. So and their names were Mason and Dixon. And so when they surveyed that, the border of Pennsylvania and Maryland became the Mason-Dixon line.
Huh. Amazing. Here were these guys, they wanted a legacy, and they got it, huh?
They sure did.
Now, you were a park ranger, and I was reading on your website that you had the opportunity to spend time in all of the historic buildings located within the Gettysburg National Park. And did you actually live in some of those?
Yeah, I had friends in a lot of them, so I visited in most of them, and I did live in 4 different buildings in the national park, and almost every one of them I had some kind of weird experience, and that's kind of how this ghost thing got started.
And that's where I want to start. We need to go to a break, but when we come back, that's where I would like to start, because my listeners know I'm all about the ghost, and I'm curious about the ghost of Gettysburg.
Okay.
So everybody hang in there, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Friday Happy Hour. Hi, this is Annmarie Kelly, author, victory strategist, and the radio show host of the Friday Happy Hour. I trust you're enjoying my conversation with this fabulous, victorious woman. If you're getting inspired with ideas and feeling empowered, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more for you. Tips, downloads, resources at the Victorious Woman Project. Go to victoriouswoman.com and look around and get on my mailing list so you can be the first to know about the newest good things I have for you. That's www.victoriouswoman.com. Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and I'm here with historian and ghost hunter Mark Nesbitt. Mark, I just can't wait to ask you this. When did you start noticing the ghosts? Were you living in those houses when you started noticing the ghosts?
Oh yeah, everyone I lived in had some sort of weird thing happen. And for example, in particular, I lived in the National Cemetery Lodge. I mean, a lot of people have been driven past it and walked past it. It's the building that's in the National Cemetery. Mm-hmm. And I lived there, and one day I was I remember this distinctly, I was taking my dishes out from the dining room into the kitchen, and I heard the strangest sound. And I said, that sounded like a baby crying. Mm-hmm. And I said, but wait a minute, I'm here alone. That can't be. And, I'm trying to think, was that the pipes? No, it was baby crying. Hmm. And I casually mentioned it, I believe, in the coffee room or to some colleagues at the park, and they said, well, you have to talk to somebody. You have to talk to this other person who lived there before you. So I looked them up, and I talked to them, and sure enough, they had the same experience. They'd heard exactly the same thing. And so now I'm thinking, wait, what's going on here? So I did a little more research. Just down the street, 2 doors down the street, was the famous orphanage that was in Gettysburg. And, of course, they had children and babies there crying all the time. So I put 2 and 2 together. Here we have a situation where we have 2 different people, same building, same weird noise of a baby crying, and an old closed down orphanage just down the street. And that was actually kind of some of the first. So I jotted that down. You know how you are. You're a writer. You know how you are. You jot stuff down all the time. And I started talking to some older park rangers, and they gave me their stories. And eventually I got enough stories to put together the first ghost book of Gettysburg, which I thought was going to be it. You know, Ghosts of Gettysburg in 1991. Within 2 weeks of the publication, I started getting phone calls, letters, faxes. Of course, this is before email or anything like that. People saying, my neighbors are wrong, I'm not nuts. Here's what happened to me at Gettysburg. And so now I have enough for one more, at least one more book, which would be the 8th book in the series.
And so is that the one you're working on now?
Yes, the one I've been working on, sadly. But I actually did finish another book this week, too. We're on the same schedule, apparently.
Are you doing an October launch?
No, actually, I just finished the novel. That I've been working on for a couple of years. So,
nice.
Yeah.
So, Mark, listen, so you said that you think Gettysburg is the most haunted place in the country. And, you know, why do you think all the ghosts haunt Gettysburg?
Well, you had unprecedented slaughter here. 51,000 casualties. That's killed, wounded, and missing. That's enough people to fill up Yankee Stadium. The way they died, I mean, is really typical of what produces a ghost, which would be a youthful death, unfinished business, sudden death. Some don't know they're dead. A violent death. Perhaps some guilt involved with it because they're in the process of killing their fellow man. I mean, it's all Gettysburg for 3 days was really the perfect storm to create ghosts. And so that's why I think Gettysburg is still one of the most haunted places. Of course, now all the soldiers are dead. All the ones that fought here are dead, all 200,000 of them, so they can come back anytime they want and visit their old stomping grounds. So I think it's, and of course the stories, I have well over 1,000 stories, just Gettysburg alone.
So let me just be a skeptic for a minute. How do you really know there are any ghosts there?
Well, there are a couple of ways. First of all, obviously the stories that I collect, I have a couple of methods of when people tell me a story, a couple of methods I have to make sure that they're not making it up just to get in a book. First of all, I never pay anybody to tell me a story, so there's no incentive there, and I never promise that it's going to be in the book. But I do ask them to write it down and mail it to me. Then I'll call them up and ask them, well, can you tell me the story again? If it has changed significantly, in other words, now there are 5 ghosts in there rather than the 2, or if there's a weird non sequitur in there, like they're talking, and then a bird flies by, and they tell me about this bird, and then they go. In other words, then they're telling the truth. Okay, if they're making more ghosts, they're not. They're probably making it all up. But if they have this, weird thing that has nothing to do with the ghost story in it, then I'm kind of, a little more convinced. But I myself have had some experiences, so that's the other reason why I believe that there are ghosts here.
And let me just check. Do we need to break? Oh, okay. So what were they, Mark?
My experiences? Well, I've seen at least 3 or possibly 4 visuals, which is very, very rare. Those are only about 10%. I've heard things. I've heard cannons fire out on the battlefield, drums. I've been touched. I've had my sleeve pulled. I've smelled weird smells in houses and out on the battlefield, So I've had all the classical experiences that are ghostly.
I was telling Carol, your spouse Carol, about my ghostly encounter at the Gettysburg Inn a couple of years ago, and it was at the Civil War Winter Ball, and I know my listeners have heard it a couple of times, but my spouse took a picture. My spouse Joseph took a picture, and we didn't think twice about anything until we came home. We were looking at the pictures, and here it was a body, and then not too far from it was the head of the body. And so I was telling Carol that story, and she was explaining that I was thinking about this, and she didn't explain it this way. This is my thing, that the ghosts have sort of like a cruise director that tells them sort of what's going on, and then they can pick and choose what they feel like going to.
Well, that's as good a explanation as any. I mean, we I know for a fact that when people come here to Gettysburg to see a ghost or to experience a ghost, it's kind of up to the ghost too. It's not just you trying to communicate, because a lot of people do. Sometimes it helps if you ask, may I take your photograph, or will you please talk to me, and then you try and get EVP, the electronic voice phenomenon. It's nice to be polite. I mean, imagine yourself sitting in a nice, comfortable chair, and all of a sudden somebody kicks in your door and says, anybody want to talk here? You're not gonna,
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, because So anyway, those are some of the techniques that we use.
So what do you think attracts them? Like when, say something like the Civil War Winter Ball or to your ghost tours, what do you think attracts different? Are there different ones at different times, or do the same ghosts hang out in the same places?
It depends. We have some resident spirits in our building that we run the ghost tours out of. There's Mrs. Kitzmiller, who once owned the place. There's Georgia soldiers that actually occupied the place, and we can almost always get an answer about, have you ever been to Atlanta, or have you ever been to Macon? Wow. And then every once in a while we'll have visitors, just for no reason at all. One of the funniest stories is one time one of our mediums came to me and she said, Mrs. Kitzmiller is really upset. There's a little Italian lady that's up in her kitchen, and she says, for me, to get rid of her. I'm like, okay. So I'm standing in the middle of the room all by myself, and I'm like, all right, you have to leave, I'm talking to myself, I guess. You got to leave because Mrs. Kitzmiller's upset, and so goodbye. So the funny part is, I walked downstairs, and about 10 minutes later, another medium that we use happened to stop by. She walks in. She's got an unusual look on her face. She goes, "Who's the little Italian lady walking around out in the street in front here?"
Oh, you made a little Italian lady homeless.
Yeah, a little Italian lady ghost. Doesn't know what to do now, so it's my fault.
Oh my goodness! Well, I hope she found a home, that little ghost.
Me too. I don't know how she got here or why she was here. I think she came with some other with a ghost hunting team that I had invited over.
Oh, and like she sort of came with that group and then never left.
Yes, that happens. That happens fairly frequently. People will go up to people who can actually see ghosts, sensitives, and they'll say, is my house haunted? And the sensitive will say, I don't know, but you are. I can see them. They're hanging around with you.
Oh, so sometimes it's not even the house that it is, but that a ghost sort of attaches to a being, a human being?
Absolutely.
Huh. And why do you think that is?
It could be a relative. It could be. So many times when kids have imaginary friends when they're young, later on in their adult years, they'll be looking through an old album and they'll say, "Mom, you remember that imaginary friend I had when I was a kid?" And they're like, "Yeah, there he is," and it's a great-great-grandfather.
That happened to my cousin. That she said her daughter used to talk about this guy, this ghost that used to be, it was her imaginary friend. And then it turned out, as she got older, it turned out to be our uncle who died in the war. But that's frequent, when that child grew up and she saw that picture, she said, that's who used to come to visit me. Very interesting. Yeah, because I think kids are more sensitive to that, don't you think?
Oh, I know for a fact. Kids are way more sensitive. Kids and animals, because haven't been told yet. Look, don't be talking about your imaginary friends or seeing ghosts or anything like that, because you're going to school now and people are going to laugh at you. Almost every kid gets that story, and so we get talked out of our sensitivity. Some of us are, I can't put myself in the category of being as sensitive because I'm not. It's basically but some people are, and they just haven't been talked out of it for the most part.
So you're not a sensitive, Mark, but so how do you, do you use equipment? How do you find the ghosts?
Yeah, what we found out is that everybody is good at different things, okay, in terms of the equipment and locating spirits. My thing is EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, where I will ask a question and then let a tape recorder play or a video or a digital recorder play it back, and I get answers to the questions sometimes. Carol is very, very good using dowsing rods. I have video of her when I did the book Civil War Ghost Trails, going to abandoned cemeteries or even active cemeteries and walking along with the dowsing rods. As soon as she walks over a grave, they cross. As soon as she walks past it, they uncross.
Wow.
And some people are better taking photographs. Once again, asking, "Can I take your picture?" and then taking a picture and getting a spirit in them. So everybody's different. We try and teach intuition forward. In other words, go with your gut, then take the picture, or then go where you feel the ghost might be or the presence might be, and go with that.
So if I feel like there's in a corner of a room, if I feel something there and I go over there, then it's polite to say, "May I take your picture?"
What I would do is I would encourage that. I'd say, "Annmarie, where do you want to go in this building?" And let you go. And then you could ask, "May I take your picture, or will you talk to me?" And that's when all of a sudden, if you feel like a cold spot or something, that's when you bring out the instruments like the thermal scanner and try and, okay, pick up whether you really are, whether your skin actually is getting cold or whether it's just your imagination.
Interesting. Mark,
Yeah.
we need to take another break, but I want to keep talking ghosts, so let's do that when we come back.
Okay.
And you're all listening to the Friday Happy Hour.
Are you one of those women who lived the first part of your life as a really good girl? That is, you did all the right things and followed all the so-called rules for women? I was like that too. But have you noticed that once you passed 40, you have less patience for those rules? Maybe you even think that the rules really don't make sense for you anymore. Maybe they never did and you just didn't realize it. Do you want to go where other recovering good girls meet to inspire each other and support their new empowered selves? Then join me, Annmarie Kelly, and some very fabulous Victorious Women. We're on Facebook at the Victorious Woman Project. So go to facebook.com/Victorious Woman Project. I'll talk to you there.
Welcome back to the Friday Happy Hour. I'm Annmarie Kelly, and we're here with Mark Nesbitt, and we're talking about ghosts in Gettysburg. So, Mark,
Yes.
are there any ghostly hotspots in Gettysburg that you especially like?
Oh, yeah. Well, people always ask me what's the most haunted place on the battlefield, and it actually changes periodically, But I can almost guarantee that you probably will get some activity. Two places would be Devil's Den. And the Triangular Field, which is right next to it. For some reason, those places are very, very active.
But that's not where the most deaths happened. I don't think it was it?
No, as a matter of fact, there were a lot because it was in part of the second day's battle, but that was spread out. I mean, not too far from there is the wheat field. There's been activity there. Everywhere on the battlefield there's been activity, including East Cavalry Battlefield, which was a big cavalry battle 3 miles east of town.
And when you do your ghost tours, well, tell me, how does that work when you do your ghost tours?
Well, our tours, there are no tours allowed out on the national park itself. However, not too many people realize it, but Gettysburg was part of the battlefield. The afternoon of July 1st, the Confederates took Gettysburg, so they remained in town. That's why I said our building was occupied by Georgians. So we take walking tours. They're about anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half long, depending on the tour you take. And we walk people through the darkened streets of Gettysburg because they happen at night, and with a candle-lit guide with a candle lantern with him or her, and they tell the history of the site where you're standing and then the ghost story, because we like to get the history in there as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
How do your people who are on the tour, how did they experience the ghosts?
Well, you have to remember that seeing a ghost is just about 10% of all the ghost experiences. You have to have all your senses ready. Hearing ghosts is probably the most common, so they may hear footsteps following them. They may hear cheers of large bodies of men, which we've had. They may smell something weird, like a lot of people will smell sulfur, rotten eggs, they say. Well, it's because sulfur was a component of the black powder, the gunpowder that was used at the time. They could be touched. I myself have my sleeve pulled. All the senses are involved, and so just be ready.
Does anybody get like too scared and they can't finish the tour?
We've had some runners. That's what we call them. Some people would say that's it. But, it's not. We're not the type of tour where anybody, jumps out with a chainsaw. Like I tell people, if somebody jumps out of the bushes with a chainsaw on our tour, run. Because it's not part of our tour, But nobody does that. It's mostly storytelling, the history, and the ghost story of that site.
And what was your most fun ghostly encounter?
Fun? I don't know if they're fun. The one with the little Italian woman was pretty funny, but I think one of the most interesting, some of the most interesting ones were out at a place called the Daniel Lady Farm. I was out there with a group that was having a campfire at night, and I looked off into the trees, and I saw someone with red pants on. And I'm like, what in the heck is that? And I kept looking, and I said, is that? So I said to one of the guys when they were, one of the people there, I said, what, is anybody here with red pants that's missing from this group? And they're like, no, we're all here. I said, okay, well, what can I say? And this happens very frequently. You just have to, you try and figure out who it might be, but when you run out of people that it might be, then you're kind of stuck with what you're stuck with.
When is the most common time that you've noticed that you might meet up with somebody from the other side?
Well, a lot of people think that ghosts only come out at night, and this is not true. It's there's no rule book for ghosts. 50%, a good 50% of the stories that I've collected happen during the day. So you're going to run into one, and it's really not up to you, because I've had a lot of people write to me, and they start their letter off by saying, I've never had a paranormal experience in my life till I came to Gettysburg, and here's what happened to me. So
wow, so I'm thinking that. So I guess the ghosts don't really know whether it's day or night, huh?
I don't think it matters to them. I mean, yeah, they don't have to sleep, so they can go on. I don't assume they have to sleep, but they don't, so they can go out at night. It's just, I think the evidence is easier to gather. It's quiet. Your senses are a little more tuned in during the night. There's not as much activity. That's why people think that you may see a ghost, and also Hollywood, of course,
sure,
and TV tells us that you can only do a paranormal investigation at night, which is wrong.
But it is true that your energy sort of changes, and maybe you're not as all of the stuff of the day isn't playing on your mind, and you're just sort of shifting into another level of energy, so maybe you're more open to it at that point.
Well, it's definitely quieter at 2 o'clock in the morning here in Gettysburg.
Yeah,
you don't have trucks and people and stuff like that. But and so you may be able to tune in a little bit more. I don't think it has anything to do with the ghosts, that they only come out at night.
Have you ever had an encounter that scared you so much, Mark, that it made you think about hanging up your EMF meter?
No. No, not really. It's always been whenever something, and I've had some pretty weird things that have happened. You hear a door slam, you run towards it. You want to say, okay, what in the heck was that? And that's how it's always been with the people that I work with. We want to know what this phenomenon is, and we're not in it really so much for the thrill factor. Although some people would run. I mean, maybe people with better sense than me, but.
Well, and you know what, Mark, because I like all that stuff, people are like, what is wrong with you?
Well, more and more people are getting into it as a hobby. I mean, there are more ghost hunting groups out there now than ever. So it's a popular hobby. Whatever. If you want to do it, fine. If you're too scared, then it's probably not a good idea for you.
Well, that's probably true.
Yeah.
So how often do you have your ghost tours?
Well, we're open every night. 20 all week this time of year, and that goes on until Labor Day, and then we alternate our hours a little bit. We change our hours a little bit, but if people want, they can check the hours and even make reservations on our website. So.
Yeah, and did I missee this, or I thought I saw one that was like at 11 o'clock in the morning. Is that right, or was I wrong?
No, that's not ours. That's I don't know what that is, because there are a lot of ghost tours out there. But ours start at 8 o'clock. Okay. We're open. Our building is open at 2, and we have a bookstore, and you can buy things. We're right on Baltimore Street on the main drag. It's 271 Baltimore Street here in Gettysburg. We're only a couple hours from where you are and your listeners. Mm-hmm. But our website is ghostsofgettysburg.com.
Ghostsofgettysburg.com.
Yeah, plural, ghostsofgettysburg.com. And they can look that up and get all the information they want. They can order books, make reservations. They can call our office.
And you do book signings on the weekend, too, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah, starting now, this time of year. I'll be here tomorrow night, as a matter of fact. I'll be over in the office signing books.
Well, that's great. You know what, Mark? I'm going to be out there sometime over the summer or in September to take that candlelight tour, and I'll stop by the store and I'll say hello to you and Carol.
Annmarie, give us a call ahead of time. We'll make sure we're here.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Mark, thanks so much for coming today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And have a happy 4th of July weekend.
Well, same to you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And listen, Victory Chicks and you guys, I wanted to tell you, I started to tell you earlier about the Wait, Don't Tell Me. So for some of you who know that show, it's a current news show but it's a comedy. It's like a game show. And what happens is, it's really kind of too hard to explain, except that it's a fun show. And last week's show, for those of you who know, it's on WHYY here in this area, was taped last night at the Man. And the celebrity, there's always one celebrity. The celebrity was legendary Flyers goalie Bernie Parent. Except the host kept calling him Bertie Parent. So clearly he's not from Philly and he's not a hockey fan. But if you're a Wait, Don't Tell Me fan, I think that you'll get a kick out of it. And Bernie Parent was very funny. I was sitting in the balcony and I took a picture, and I haven't posted it yet, but I'll post it on today's radio wrap-up at victoriouswoman.com. And one thing that I was thinking about was, now some of you know how big the Mann Center is. There probably were, a few thousand people, maybe 5,000 people there, all coming to see this taping of Wait, Don't Tell Me. And then I started to think about WCAG, and I thought, how cool would it be if we all came, if we did that at, say, like the Nauer Performing Arts Center. We could go and we could invite all of you to come. And I'm not sure yet what we would do. But for those of you who are regular listeners, wouldn't that be a fun thing for all of us to get together? We could do like some kind of a show, and then afterwards we could have a meet and greet, and then we who sit in the quiet and desolation of the studio could actually get to meet some of you. I think that would be a fun thing. So, and you know what, if you think that would be fun too, just send me an email and let me know, and then I'll pass it along to the powers that be here at WCAG. And you know what? I don't have a quote for you this week because I got really busy and I didn't find one. But I'm wondering what you're doing this weekend, and I wanted to remind you that the 2017 Summer Festival at Rose Tree Park, that's on 252 in Delaware County, they have some pretty neat things. There's a Sousa band on Sunday night. Tomorrow night there's an orchestra, and you know how I love Charlie Gracie. Charlie Gracie's going to be there on the 16th of July, and and I'm going. So if you like all that rock and roll stuff from the 50s, and you know I do, Charlie Gracie will be there. And there's a bunch of stuff. If you go to the Rose Tree Park, you can just download the schedule for the whole rest of the summer. They're there until the 13th of August. And they have different, there's a Billy Joel tribute, an Eric Clapton tribute, a Pink Floyd tribute. So different nights have different things going on. There's even the Brandywine Ballet is even going to be there. That's right here in Westchester. So they're going to even be at the summer festival. And my friends over at the Reactors Comedy Club, remember a couple weeks ago I was judging a contest there? Well, my friends over there said that if any of you want to go, tell them that you heard about it on WCHE, and instead of being $10 a person, it'll be 2 for $15. So you get a $5 discount. If two of you go, you'll get a $2.50 discount. So it was fun, and I can't remember. He told me who was going to be the headliner, and I can't remember who it is right now, and I'm sorry that I don't. But that's right over on the Wyndham Park Hotel, and it's right behind Hooters and Dunkin' Donuts. So if you're looking for something to do tonight, they're going to be there tonight. And maybe you're going down the shore for the weekend. So I think the weather's going to be good. It's going to be hot. You're going to have a good time. So listen, whatever it is that you're doing this weekend, I'm hoping that you'll stay safe, have a great time, and I hope you come back. Thank you for coming today, and I hope you come back with me next week. Yep, I'm Annmarie Kelly, and this is the Friday Happy Hour.
Thanks for listening to this Friday Happy Hour. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review today's show. And join us again next week for the Friday Happy Hour with Annmarie Kelly.